It's that time of year. You guys ready? If you haven't already, I'm starting now to plant my seeds and where I'm going to be planting and all that type of stuff. If you have not gardened, now is the perfect year to do it because the inflation rates are, as we've all seen, are like through the roof. And they're climbing like every day. I can't even like make a list. I go to the store and then things are like 50 cents to $1 higher. And it's like, wait a minute, carrots weren't that last week. So one huge way to save is by planting your own seeds. Now, some I might get at like Baker Creek. These I actually got on clearance last year for like 10 cents. And my gardener's a great place. He has great inexpensive seeds. A lot of times he has sales running through. Yeah, so great places to get your seeds. You can also save your seeds. These are, a lot of times what I'll do is if there's a seed that I like, I might go to like M.I. Gardener or Baker's Creek if it's like an heirloom type seed that I want to do. These are called Christmas limas. I would get a packet like this, and then I would keep them. I would keep them for the next year. So I have a big jar like this, and I just want to. I really like these, and I wanted to be able to bless others with some of these this coming season. So I have a big half-gallon jar of it. I also want to plant a full row of those, but I want to give away a couple to different people. So that is what I am up to. Hi guys, Mama Bear to Many here. I am a stay-at-home mom to 14 children. I have 12 children still at home, and we homestead. So we try to grow as much food as we possibly can. This past year has really been crazy. My son had died in February, so a lot of our things that we normally do did not actually happen. Like we normally raise chickens and that type of stuff. And a lot of the gardening things, like my heart was just like not in it. So it's going to be a new year. It is 2023. It is February 17th. And so I have written out my plan for my spaces that I have, or a lot of the spaces that I have. So we are really blessed. We have a Rimmel greenhouse. Rimmel's the brand of greenhouse. And so it is 32, I believe, by 96, I want to say. It's been a couple years. Yeah, so we have a lot of space to grow in there. And if you haven't seen other videos, you can see a little bit inside any of the gardening videos. A lot of times I'm inside of the high tunnel. So basically what I did last year was I built 2 rows along either side of the high tunnel, and those all have raised beds. So I actually have 10 raised beds on each side. They're not necessarily specific sizes. I just kind of used scrap wood and then filled those up. So when I filled those up, I used like old leaves. I used kale. Yeah, kale. I used some like old stems to kale. I used some seaweed. I used manure and more manure and some compost. So just a bunch of different things that I used to fill the beds. The beds are full, and they were full last year, and they are pretty well full this year. Some of the chickens got in there and scratched around, and then the pigs got loose, and they rooted up quite a bit. Right now we have our the rest of our wood for our wood stoves out in the high tunnel as well to keep it dry. But I'm really thinking about the coming season. So I will start plants inside the end of March. So I needed to put everything out on paper. So I have what I did last year. This was my basic plan last year. I wrote what things I had in each bed. Those are all on the side. Obviously, this is not some beautiful diagram. This is just what I did on the sides. And then I run my rows long. So I had 4, I had 8 rows of corn right down the center, and that worked great. And then I had some tomatoes and peppers and peas along there, just how it's going to look. So that's how it was last year. And then I obviously planted a little bit after my first season. I planted some of a fall crop. So I got an additional benefit of that. So this year's high tunnel is going to look a little different. Obviously, if you can, you should be rotating your crops around, and that is what I am doing here. So I will show you this. This is what we're looking at for the year. So then I just write down what I'm doing. So last year I had a lot of my broccoli and kale and that type of stuff, all the what are those called? Broccoli, kale, cruciferous, whatever you call them. Anyway, those types of vegetables. I had those along the right side. And then this year they're going to be along the left side. I was able to start them earlier last year as well, which is totally awesome. So what I have written down for those, which are going to be the left side, I have 3 beds of strawberries in the front. So I'm going to clean those up. And then I'll have beets, 2 beds of beets, kale, cabbage, broccoli, and cauliflower in those beds there. And then on the other side, I'll have a bed of hot peppers, a bed of celery, leeks, direct sow carrot, arugula, carrot, onion, peppers. That's what that's going to look like. I could actually even grow tons more onion. I'm going to experiment a little bit this year, taking onion and interplanting it in some things. I've seen people plant like onion, like bunching onions in between like different types of like cabbages or lettuces or that type of stuff. So I always thought that you couldn't plant onions in with those things, but I've seen quite a few videos about that. So I think I'm going to give it a try in a small section and see how it goes. I use commercial weed mat. I've been asking for years to get a dump of chips and have not been able to get it. I use commercial weed mat so that I can suppress my weeds in the rows in between what I'm growing. So this middle row here is going to be, that was my corn last year. And then I'm going to have, this year, I'm going to have half a thing of sweet potatoes. Last year, I grew sweet potatoes in the boxes. I don't know if you saw that or not, but I grew sweet potatoes in my boxes and they grew great. And I was really surprised. We live in like a zone 4 or 5. We're like right on the edge. And I was surprised that I was able to grow sweet potatoes. So I have the sweet potatoes in the middle section. And then I'm doing some cukes and potatoes in there. And I'm going to cover them with a row cover. So I want to do my cukes and then try to interplant some potatoes and then have them for the fall season. We have a horrible time with potato bugs, but we've noticed that if we start them later that we've had a better success with that. So I'm trying to see if we could try to do cukes and then potatoes. It's really like an experiment on our behalf because there's not a lot of information about those types of things. So then I have one whole row, which is about 80, it's a little over 80 feet. I have cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower. So I'm rotating these things. I'm putting like some broccoli over in the beds. I'll start those off earlier. Then like 2 weeks later, I'll put some broccoli and some cauliflower. Just so, because this is for our own personal consumption. And the broccoli and the cauliflower, we just want to go out there and pick it fresh and eat it fresh. And then I'm only doing, normally I do at least 1 row of tomatoes. And I have a ton of tomato products still left over that I canned. So I think this year I'm only doing half a row of tomatoes. So I'm thinking I'm doing maybe 40 or 50 plants. Some years I've done up to 200 plants. Actually, I think it was like 275 one year, but I think I'm only going to do like 50 plants this year, max. And then I'm going to try some bush beans. I've never done the bush beans in the high tunnel either. And then I'm going to try some pole beans as well. I haven't done those in the high tunnel either. And then my corn, I'm going to try and put down that last side. I don't know how it's going to work or not. I also would like to experiment with some of the corn by taking it out once it's like this high, taking it out and planting it outside and see how that works. So that is what it looks like. That's just for my high tunnel. So how do I figure out how much food that I need for my family? So there's plenty of calculators and that type of stuff, and you can get a general idea. My thoughts are, say like for spaghetti or spaghetti sauce, I want enough tomatoes that I'm able to make enough quarts of spaghetti sauce that I could have spaghetti once a week. So for us, that would be 3 quarts of spaghetti sauce. So I need to can roughly, if I did 52 weeks in a year, obviously it's not going to be like that. My goal is to do 150 quarts of spaghetti sauce for the year for our family. And then I want to do another, this is going to sound like a lot, another 100 or so quarts of salsa. Our salsa actually goes really fast because we use that on tacos. We use that with chips. We use that, it's actually our base to make chili. So we use salsa more than we actually, or about the same that we would use spaghetti sauce. We use it quite a bit. So I want to make sure that I have enough to make those numbers. And you can go online and look for a calculator that will tell you how many pounds of tomatoes a certain type of tomato should produce, and get your ideas off of that. But remember, it always like underestimate how much it says, because a lot of times plants die or bugs get it or something like that. So I usually go by that, and then I almost double what it says that I need, and it serves me fairly well. So then I have a space next to the high tunnel, which is like the equal amount of space that is set up for rows. And I am not quite sure what I want to do there this year. I'm kind of really just trying to feel things out. I want my homestead to feel like I want to love to go in there. So like I'm thinking in front of my high tunnel, there's like that space right where the doors come in, and I want that space to be beautiful. So I'm thinking that I want to like dig out that area. It kind of goes down right there. So I think I want to dip it out a little bit further and maybe run some gravel so our driveway could go around, and then plant some flowers or whatever in the front, and add some herbs and flowers right in front of the high tunnel. One, we get weeds that come up under the high tunnel, which is really annoying. But it's also something like, I just want to like go by and be like, oh, that's so beautiful, like just make it feel like it's not a chore, like it's a beautiful place and just a place of prayer. And when I first started gardening, I used to have, before we had phones and all that type of stuff, I would put an MP3 player in my ear. And then it started off with a CD player. Then I went to an MP3 player. I'd put it in my ear and I listened to the Bible while I was gardening. And I would take the kids over by the garden, and they had their little swing set over there. And I'd let all my little kids, because they were all little at that point, I'd let all my little kids play on the swing set while I was in the garden, but they could only play on that swing set kind of when I was in the garden. So it was really special. So I want to create little spaces like that within the high tunnel and within the other gardens. So it's a beautiful place for them to be too. So I have another section over on the other side, and you've probably seen where my dwarf trees are. So I planted my dwarf trees too close together. I don't really know what to do with them. They are producing fruit. I need to really look and research about that, but I'd like to possibly transplant some smaller trees to give the bigger trees some more space, but there's no real smaller trees. If you have any advice on that, I would love to hear about that. I do have, I think 2 pawpaw trees that are smaller, and I think I could transplant those. I just have to really look and evaluate what the heck's going on over there. But I really want to get control. That area was actually where my original gardens were. And I started off with like a space, and then it didn't work, and I like dug it by hand, and it was just like crazy. And then I ended up building raised beds over there. So where we live, we're kind of like, I don't want to say that we're at the bottom of a mountain. We're really not like at the bottom of a mountain, but we're more in like a valley type area. So, and the ground is really hard. Like there's times that like if we are going to put a T-post in or dig a hole, we've had to use a pickaxe. So we have really hard ground. Things grow really well in raised beds. So I have this other, I'm trying to see how many beds I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay. So 24 beds in this area here. So the issue is I tend to want to plant my squash there because then I can have different types of squash contained in like a smaller area. But then they're all close to each other and we have squash bugs. So I'm not really sure. I'm going to try to cover, I have Agribond, and I'm going to try to cover all my squash plants this year until they get flowers on them. And then I'm going to take the covers off and see if that makes any difference. If anyone's done that, I'd love to hear about it. Or if you've listened to anyone who has done it, that would be great. If you could let me know down below, because it's really something that I'm interested in. I like to say that I'm a fairly new gardener, but I have been gardening about 10 years. It's just been growing and growing and growing. And I think sometimes that like, I might have like grown too fast at a certain stage, because then I wasn't able to, I'm also raising, 12 kids, and I can't always sit in front of a book and get all the knowledge that I need to be getting. And so that can be kind of frustrating, but in a good way. I mean, really in a good way. Sometimes I don't have the time to go out there and weed the garden, especially like with nursing babies or being very pregnant or whatever, which is normally like the case for me, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I love this season of life that I'm in right now. So we already planted a bunch of garlic. We planted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, planted 7 beds of garlic. I think I have over 400 cloves in those 7 beds. And that I say it should do us. Last year, I think we did 300, and I am out. I'm already out of garlic. So I'm hoping that that's enough. So I have the garlic, kale, lettuce, beets, onions, kohlrabi, another onion bed. Let's see, the blue Hubbard squash. We already put comfrey in like this back bed that's like really low. It's only a 2x4 high. But we were trying to like contain the comfrey into a certain area, and that's kind of off by the chicken yard. So it's kind of like, okay, we could have that, cut it, and then throw it to the chickens if we needed to do that. And that would be good for them. So the comfrey, acorn squash, 2 beds of that, beets and blue Hubbard. Zucchini, bush beans, beets, and I want to do strawberries, June bearing strawberries. I'd like to maybe do something in the high tunnel as well. I would love to have a big strawberry patch, but I've just really struggled at this property doing strawberries. When I lived in the city, I had this huge row of strawberries and they were like gorgeous. But so on those, there's also the trellises, and they have grapes all along the trellises. So hopefully those grapes will really take off this year. Last year we got maybe like half a bowl, a big bowl, like half a big bowl of grapes, and that was awesome. So I'd like to see if we can just help those along. I'm going to add some more manure in there and all that fun stuff. And then I have 2 back beds that are asparagus. So I need to weed those out because they were looking kind of funky the end of last year. And yeah. So then I have a list that I kept from last year, and it has the dates that I started things, and the dates really worked well last year. I've been trying over the years and just trying to tweak the dates when to start things, and I'd never had success with broccoli before, but last year both broccoli and cauliflower did really well. I was thinking that I was starting it too early, but I wasn't, and it just turned out great. So there's my start dates on things. Again, this is like, I like to say that I'm zone 4 just in case, because I'm like right on the edge. So I most of the time plan myself as a zone 4, but occasionally get daring and plant myself as a 5. So, yep, there is that. So I have this cool kind of thing, and it is about, it was printed off from Victory Gardens from the University of Maryland, and this was during World War II. And they had this little chart. I wish I had a link to it, but it has been years, and I tried to go back to it, and it wasn't available. So I will just hold it up here for a minute, but it's really interesting. It tells you like what to plant. And this would have been a zone 5 type chart. Can y'all see that? I'm hoping that you can. I just found it very interesting. I love these old time type papers. So it's talking about all the different things and when they would plant it and what they plant after it. And I don't know if that would be helpful for you and yours. I think it's just interesting. Another thing that was part of that was, and maybe you can find this on a different page or something, but it tells you for a small garden. It's kind of funny because it says a small garden, and it's saying a small garden would be 50 by 30 feet wide. And many people now, they don't think that that's a small garden. They would say that that would be like a large garden, right? So it has here this. So it's snap beans, half a pound of seed. So it's telling you what you could plant in a small garden. So it tells you how to do it, and then after harvesting the beans, follow that with 3 rows of turnips with 1 ounce of seed, so that you could make the maximum use of your garden. Maybe you can, if you can't really see that, maybe you could just pause the video so you could write that down if you needed to. Okay, so that is really interesting to me. So this would be for 50 feet long. So in a 50-foot long, you could have 30 cabbage plants. You could have 30, if you have 1 row of cabbage 50 feet long, you'd have 30 plants. It's really kind of cool. And then this is how many pounds, and maybe you could look this up as well. So it talks about how many pounds. So like snap beans, if you had a 100-foot row, you would get 50 pounds roughly of snap beans. And then how many snap beans do you need to can 1 quart is 2.5 to 3 pounds. So by that, you can decide how many you need to plant. So let's just do the math on this. So say I need, let's see, I usually do 150 quarts of beans. So I know I need 150 quarts of beans. So that means that I'm going to need 300 pounds of beans, which means that I will need to have, at 50 pounds per row, that I would need to have 6 rows of beans, 6 100-foot rows of beans. So I don't know. It's just really a kind of cool thing. So can you see that? This one's written a little bit tinier. Again, I wish I had the links and I could just give them to you. and there might be some calculators out there. I find that sometimes the calculators are just like what people think. These were actually written out, and I have a book too. It's called Food for the Home Front or something like that, and it's over in England. Is it in England? No, Britain. It's from Britain, and they wrote out different things like this so that it was actually the minister of food, and they would tell you like how much food you should be planting in your areas. So yeah, it's, to me it's really like interesting, and I'm like a numbers person or whatever, but you can get an idea of like how much you can get for each thing. So for instance, tomatoes, for a 100-foot row, you would get 200 pounds of tomatoes. And how many pounds per quart is 3 pounds per quart of tomatoes. So if you really are being serious about trying to can your own tomato sauce and stuff, you need a lot of tomatoes. So anyway, that is that. Once I figure out what I'm doing outside, I will let you guys know. That's just kind of how I have my things set up. Once I start to plant things, so I have my list for 2023. So things that I'm going to start inside is starting broccoli, cauliflower, celery, leeks, onions, melons, peppers, tomatoes, and sweet. Oh, no. Take that back. Peppers, tomatoes are going to start on March 21st. Cabbage on March 28th. Sweet potatoes, I'm actually going to start the slips for those on March 9th, or probably next week, because you just have to change the water out, so they should be okay. So that is it. I'm kind of excited. The past couple of years, I have been looking for like a way to try to make money off of the farm and that type of stuff. And I have decided that doing too much of that takes my joy away from it. I just want to spend this year, especially, just enjoying my children, like in the garden, enjoying taking my time with each one of my children and just showing with them and sharing with them, like why we garden, the love of gardening, allowing them to choose different things maybe that they want to plant, or allowing them to choose, with 10 daughters, allowing them to choose some flowers and just, okay, let's make this part pretty, or let's make that part pretty, and just really seeing like the beauty that God gave us. So what are y'all doing in your gardens? I'm excited to see what you guys are up to. And yeah, if you're interested in gardening, or you're going to be gardening for the first time this year, just let me know. That'd be kind of cool to share some experiences with y'all. Y'all have a great day. Bye.